We're going to solve this system by using the substitution method. So for substitution method, the way it works is you're going to solve one of the equations for either y or x, and you'll put it into the other equation. And that way you eliminate one of the variables and you only have one variable remaining. So for this, it's probably easier to start with the equation where there's a variable that's isolated by itself. You could use any equation and solve for any one, but then you might run into some fractions. So this one right here is probably going to be the easiest one to solve for, the first equation, because we have a y by itself. So I'm going to solve for y. So to do that, I'm going to move the y over to the other side. So we're going to do 3x equals y plus 11. And then I'm going to subtract 11 from both sides. And we get 3x minus 11 for y. Once you have that, you're then going to put it into the second equation. So you don't want to put this back into the one you just used, otherwise everything is going to all cancel out. You want to put it into the second equation. So we're going to do 5 times 3x minus 11. And now, by doing that step, you notice that there's only x is the main variable. This is the whole idea. You want to eliminate two variables and just get one variable that you can solve for. Now we're going to solve this. So we get 15x minus 55. So we'll have to multiply out, distribute the parenthesis there. And then we're going to simplify this. This is 13x minus 55 equals negative 16. And then we're going to add 55 to both sides there. And we get 13x equals 39. You can divide both sides by 13. And we get our first answer, x is equal to 3. But you don't want to leave your answer like this, because these are where two lines cross. So you're actually finding the intersection between these two lines. So I now want to find the y value. Well, we already have this equation. Solve for y. We have y equals 3x minus 11. And what we're going to do is put in our answer of 3 into x right here. And we get 3 times 3 minus 11. And if you work that out, you're going to get negative 2. So what you would put for the answer, you would put 3 comma negative 2. So your answer needs to be a coordinate when you answer these kind of questions. So that's how the substitution method works. Let's try another one of those so you can see what it looks like. Now this one here, notice that there's not a y that's isolated by itself. So if there isn't, then you want to just choose and solve for one. So I'm going to use probably the second equation's better here. And the reason why is because if I try and solve for x up here, I'm going to end up with some fractions. Even if I divide by 2, I'll get fractions. But this one, I'm going to start with 2x minus 4y. 6 minus 4y equals negative 6. And I notice here that I can divide everything by 2. So if I divide everything by 2, then I can get x by itself. So I have x minus 2y equals negative 3. So this is really the whole idea here. I want to try and get a variable isolated by itself. Now, that's not always going to happen that way. You might end up with fractions, and if you do, that's okay. You can still put it in and solve for it, but if there's a way for us to avoid fractions, that's going to be the easiest. So that's why I chose the second equation. I chose x and not y, because if I would have divided everything by 4, then I would have had fractions that way. So you kind of have to look at it and see, if you divide everything by a certain number, are you going to get a variable to be by itself without fractions or not? And that's the goal here. So that's why I chose, that's the kind of line of thinking that we're talking about here. I'm going to take the first equation now and put in the 2y minus 3 in place of x. And now I've eliminated the variable and the y is left. So as you notice, the last problem, we found x first. Well, this time we're going to find y first. It actually doesn't matter which variable you want to solve for first and what order you find those. Okay, so this one we'll solve 6y minus 9 plus 2y equals negative 9 there. We're going to add these two like terms together, so we get an 8y But then here, we can add 9 to both sides. The 9s are actually going to cancel out. And we get a 0. Now, if we divide both sides, we're dividing by 8. So this is not going to be undefined because the 8 is what we're dividing by. We're not dividing by 0. So 0 over 8 is going to be 0. So y equals 0 will be our first answer. We want to go back to the x equals 2y minus 3. And now we're going to put in a 0 for y. And this allows us to solve for the x. When you write your coordinates, the x has to come first. So you're going to write it as -3, 0. And that would be your answer.